Welcome back to Tasteland. I am your co-host, Francis Zierer.
And I'm Daisy Alioto.
And Daisy, who are we speaking to today?
We are speaking to Paula Mejía. She is currently Dirt's primary contributor on the entertainment beat. She lives in Los Angeles, and she just got back from Coachella, so I know she has some really good stories to share.
Have you ever been to Coachella?
I have not. I've never been a big festival person. I did go to Boston Calling, which is a much smaller festival.
Is that just like a concert where the Dropkick Murphys play?
That's not inaccurate. I think the year I went, Beck was the headliner. Oh no, it was Beck and Not Coming to Me. Anyway, no, I've never done Lala. I never did Bonnaroo. I never did Coachella. That sounds like some lyrics. But I think in general,
you sound like you sound like a male member of Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah, right. Well, I feel this is not Vanderpump, but I was thinking I feel like Dorinda these days because anytime somebody asks me how I am, I'm just like, not well, bitch. We love Dorinda. America's Princess Di. But anywho, in general with concerts, they're not something that I initiate going to. If somebody asks me to a concert, I usually will say yes. But I've literally never been like, I should buy tickets to that concert and like initiated, which is, it's weird. There's like a lot of activities like that.
It's something I like forget to do. Like I only go to a few a year. It's like, they're fun. I love concerts. Let the record show I love concerts, but I just like to be in my house.
I love to be in my house. I'm trying to remember the last concert I went to.
I remember mine.
Probably
it was Frog.
Oh yeah, I mean Friends with Benefits. That was fun.
That's a festival of sorts.
It was a festival. I did see a lot of artists in a row.
You were on the.
I was on the intellectual track.
The intellectual lineup.
But I'm having trouble thinking of a concert I've gone to since then.
Anyways, my first Dirt byline is up today about brand sillage, which came out of I think that came up when we potted with Future Commerce the other week, but on their episode.
Yeah, you riffed Too Close to the Sun, and you got a little free assignment out of it.
And it was fun. Look, let the record show. I think I said this after we finished recording that, but I went and checked again earlier. I first pitched Dirt in June of 2021, and I was rejected.
By who?
I don't know. A known Dirt editor.
Oh wow.
Okay. We could parse
roll tape
the prose, parse the syntax. But yeah, no, it was I enjoyed writing it.
Well, I enjoyed editing it the day that I needed to run, and you're welcome to pitch me again anytime. Yeah, that was fun.
Anyways, our guest is here. Let's let her in.
Let her in.
Paula, you just got back from Coachella.
I did, yeah. Somehow I'm still in one piece, so here we are.
Paula, I heard you had to have some emergency dental work while you were at Coachella. Yes.
This is true. I mean, they didn't have like an emergency dental tent at the festival, which maybe they
There was
should.
no TEND activation?
There was no dental activation, although they had so many other ones. They had electrolyt, they had Tampax, they had so many activations. But I did have to have emergency dental surgery because... And it was for the least cool reason of all time. Like, it wasn't like I like went into the mosh pit and like was throwing bows or something. No, I was, let me paint the scene for you. I'm sitting in the tent, like where you get food to catch a breather. Cause I'd been running around all day. This is also the hottest day of the weekend. It's like 105 degrees. Right.
Jeez.
So, and the sun had gone down. I was watching the Marias. They were covering Love Fool by Cardigan. Lovely. It's still like, it's cooler out. I'm like, okay, we're catching the vibes. Great. And then I'm eating a very mids poke bowl for dinner. And I feel like a little like in my mouth, and I thought that something just got stuck in my tooth, and I'm like, okay, I need to get some floss, annoying, whatever. And then as I get up and start moving around, I'm like, something is not right. And a piece of crispy onion had gotten somehow my permanent retainer dislodged in my mouth. And so, which I've had for like 20 years. And so there was just like a piece of metal just hanging out in my mouth, which it wasn't painful, but it was clearly one of those things where if I didn't get it taken care of, it was going to be such a huge problem, like for the next 48 hours. And so
can't believe your permanent retainer lasted that long. Mine only lasted like 5 years.
Oh, really? They really glued that one in good, I guess. But yeah, so I regrettably had to miss Lady Gaga, who I heard was amazing, because I had to get up at 8 a.m. and call every dentist in the Indio Palm Desert area and see, 1, are you open on Saturday? 2, do you take my insurance? And so I ended up going last minute. They fixed it in like 5 minutes, and it was so much more expensive than you thought it would be. And allegedly my insurance will cover it. And here we are. But yes, it was definitely an unexpected mishap for sure. I had like all the blisters you think you might get. My feet hurt. And then I had to get emergency dental work. So there you go.
You're sort of like the Hunter S. Thompson of like having your retainer dislodged at Coachella. I was thinking like if you had to miss Gaga because you had a migraine, that would have been like extremely on brand though.
That's very true.
What is the medication? We ran a piece about her famous pharma ad.
Gaga pharma ad?
Yeah. Is it Zyrtec or is that for allergies?
Zyrtec's for allergies.
Zyrtec is for allergies for sure.
Well, let's see. Nurtec. Okay. Valid mistake.
Nurtec, reheating Zyrtec's nachos. I'm sorry, that was terrible.
Okay, well, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the opera?
It was a blast, actually. I was not sure how it was going to work with it being so unbelievably hot, but I did something that was a total game changer. On the way out from LA, I stopped at Old Navy and I bought like several all linen get-ups.
Oh.
Key. Like last year I had just done, how you dress is like a whole thing, and it's definitely a fashion show out there. But for me, I am such a baby in hot weather to begin with, which I wrote about for Dirt at one point.
She did. It makes her sad on multiple levels.
It makes me so sad and anxious and just stirs up a bunch of teenage trauma from growing up in Houston and dealing with hurricanes. But it ended up being fine. And I thought the curation of the music was really, really good this year, especially for more like techno-y, like hardcore stuff. Like I thought it was great. I went last year and I had a lot of fun, but I think I had more fun this year. So it's good.
What was the tops and bottoms, worst and best?
Oh, I thought you were asking about the Old Navy. I was like, this episode of Tasteland is sponsored by Old Navy.
Were we in pastels?
We were not in pastels. I went for neutrals. I went for like beige, white, and black, mixed up the tones a little bit so I could at least not look like, a substitute teacher, teaching pre-K or whatever in New Mexico. So so that was my attempt at fashion, but it was great. Ended up working out. But tops and bottoms, let's see. Okay, the LA Philharmonic played at Coachella, first major orchestra.
That can't be right.
Yeah, it was incredible. I thought they sounded so good. I mean, so where they perform here in LA is this incredible concert hall that sounds perfect. It was designed by Frank Gehry. Like it's very...
It's the Disney concert hall, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like the acoustics in there are incredible. And so going into it, I really didn't know how the sound would carry in that outdoor festival setting, because they were on one of the big outdoor festival stages, not one of the indoor tents. And I was shocked at how amazing they sounded. It was clear. You could hear everything, and they had some pretty wild collaborations. They brought out LL Cool J at one point, who sounded great too. They brought out Becky G, they brought out Leve, like they had and their whole thing is like trying to be like, you know,
the cool Philharmonic.
Yeah. Exactly. The cool Philharmonic that is not fussy and be like, hey, we'll play Beethoven's Fifth, but then we'll also, back a pop stars. So that was surprising and really wonderful. And they also got the golden hour slot, which was really nice. So the sun was going down and you could hear the Philharmonic. That was great. Who else was great? There were some great punk bands there. Speed, this band from Australia, was there, who I was familiar with in passing, but they were great. They were in one of the only air-conditioned tents, which is such a godsend, but that's also where some of the heavier stuff tends to be. So it's a fun, kind of different vibe. So many stage divers. That was like, it was like a constant rotation of people jumping into the pit.
Well, wait. Are these some of the hangers on that are on the stage, or is this a large band?
Oh, so let's see. It was maybe 4 or 5 people. It was a few guitarists, bass player, drummer, vocalist, but they were very down to have people in the audience like run up on stage, jump constantly, which was a lot of fun. And VTSS, the DJ she's Polish and I think she lives in the UK, and she does like hard techno, industrial, like she turned that place into very much a rave later on, and that was so much fun too. There were a lot of great people. Those were a few that stand out to me, but yeah, it was really fun overall.
Who's the most famous person you saw in the crowd?
Nobody. They were all in VIP and I was not. So I think, later on I would scroll through Dumois and I'm like, oh yeah, Timothy Chalamet's here.
What are some fashion trends you saw among the not very important masses?
Ooh, what an enlightened question, Francis.
Well, a few things. Coachella is fascinating for being a cultural barometer in that sense, I think. And one thing that was notable that I was thinking about and I wasn't sure, and I'm curious what your take is flower crowns fully out. Did not see a single person with one. And that
peaked like 10 years ago at Coachella at this point?
Longer? Maybe. It held on for a while though.
It held on, and there were quite a few people last year that had them because Lana Del Rey played, and she has that song about Coachella where she mentions the flower crowns. So maybe that was the thing that made people
talk about wearing the band shirt to the show.
Yeah, exactly. But no one was doing that this year. So I wondered when that died out exactly. I saw so many people wearing those. I don't even know how to describe it. Like these metallic, like shimmering vests, like that were chrome. I saw so many people wearing those, probably because of Gaga. Maybe there's some chromatic connection there. A sea of Brad Green. People were really like. It was clear that so many people were there to see Charlie.
Endless Brad Summer.
Endless Brat Summer. I really thought that this would be the final stake in the heart of Brat, but no, it does not appear so. What else did I see? I saw so many assless chaps also. Like I thought like everyone was doing the cowboy get-ups last year, and I thought that was done, and there was less of it this year to some degree, but so many assless chaps. Something about the buns out is happening in culture.
Great ventilation, I guess.
It is good ventilation, but the leather, that sounds terrible for the heat. No. Those were the big ones that stood out to me fashion-wise. Yeah.
You did another hack that you said was a game changer on your experience. I think you brought it maybe when we chatted yesterday. You were in like some sort of spa wind down.
Oh, yes. This is my great hack that I will not gatekeep and I will reveal on Tasteland is, okay, so timing your entrance and exit to the festival is a very hotly debated thing because there are a few major highways that get to Indio, but they get really clogged up, of course, with people driving from LA, people driving from the Inland Empire, which is about, an hour into the drive from Los Angeles. That's a big choke point for traffic. And so the way that people describe it is if you want to leave and actually make it back at a reasonable hour and not sit in traffic for 9 hours, like from the desert to LA, a drive that, by the way, without traffic takes about 2 hours. It's not long. The thing that people say is that you either have to leave like at 2 a.m. on Sunday night, like right after the festival and just go, or you have to leave very early in the morning or you're totally screwed. So last year I was looking at that, and after a couple of late nights, I was like, I don't want to drive back at 2 a.m. and getting up super early seems unreasonable. And that also a lot of people will be on the road anyway. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a day pass to a spa at a very nice hotel out here in the desert. And I'm just going to sit in a steam room for 5 hours and just wait this out. And after those 3 days, like you end up breathing in a lot of dust and gunk just from being around there. And so, it's not uncommon for people to get a festival flu or like have sinus stuff after. So achieves two things. You skip out on traffic and you get to just sweat out like all the bad stuff. And there was nobody there, at least like the one that I went to. There were some people there yesterday, but it was mostly like wealthy retirees who were talking to their grandchildren and me. So they were talking
to you too.
They were talking to me. Yeah, we were chatting and it was great. So I did that again yesterday. So I bought the day pass to the spa. I just sat in a steam room, sat by a pool, had a turkey wrap. I did a face mask. It was glorious. And then I got home super quick.
Talk about VIP.
My own VIP experience.
Yeah, well, it's less expensive than like, buying the next level of tickets by far, and it improves your experience. So
totally. I also, speaking of tickets, there's been a lot of discourse about how, so I think it was Billboard that released a report during Coachella that 60% of people that bought tickets this year did it on a payment plan, which is fascinating. And I wonder how much that really says about being a recession indicator or how comfortable people are with putting things on their credit card and accruing debt. So it was a fascinating thing to know and then observe going into the festival, but people were still spending money from what I could see. Like it wasn't like people were really, roughing it in a different way, but it's interesting.
Okay, so here's my pitch. Malls may be dead, but music festivals are where the spirit of malls live on. And I the way I got to this idea too, I was thinking about this last night, is that like when I was a kid growing up in rural Northern California, nobody I wanted to see when I was getting into music as a high schooler, no concerts I wanted to see came through my small town. So I would go down to San Francisco, I would go to Outside Lands, and that was like, I don't even know if I could say like my first concert was like a specific concert, but it was Outside Lands. And you go there and you're running around and it's like, music festivals are where malls live on. Malls are dead. Music festivals are malls. Thoughts?
Maybe music festivals are dead because they are malls.
Oh, maybe. I never made that connection before. Outside Lands is interesting because it's very woodsy. I've been once, and it's I had a great time. Like with the environment, the way
it's been like 14 years since I went.
But. Yeah, no, I haven't been in a long time either. But yeah, music festivals as the new malls. I mean, in a sense, I think that's definitely true. The way that you see different people and their cliques hanging out at these different watering holes, and you don't have traditional stores, I guess, but the long merch lines. And
the whole place is a hot topic.
The whole place is a hot topic. Although Hot Topic has changed so much too. Like I did a story about this a few years ago where Hot Topic like they turned the lights on in the stores and they started stocking like My Little Pony and Taylor Swift merch. And so it's not the goth emo enclave it used to be. They still have the t-shirt wall, but it's very fandom driven now in terms of what they offer.
Well, which in a way was like the old, more goth emo Hot Topic. Was that still a fandom driven thing? But it's just that's how fandom culture manifested then, whereas now that same kind of like spirit of fandom is in your Taylor Swifts and your My Little Ponies, or am I totally making that up?
I think that's true to a degree, because back then, like something that had a huge cult fandom, like The Nightmare Before Christmas, was huge. And they did sell, I think, merch from the film for a long time. But I think what they told me is that really went into hyperdrive with Twilight and Napoleon Dynamite, where these like absolute like cultural behemoths in completely different ways, like one being a major studio film and one being this unsuspecting indie film that was a surprise hit at Sundance and then spawned like its own kind of cultural lexicon, like that. The Vote for Pedro shirts and the Twilight merch just were complete game changers for them. And then I think that's when they started to fully make the pivot. But then around then was really when I think Marvel started to really take off in film too. So I think it was a question of these things happening simultaneously too.
Do you think that fandom though, like what I would have thought of as the height of Hot Topic, I feel like fandom was still relatively monocultural and has become more subcultural, or at least subcultural in pockets that don't really talk to each other. So like Taylor Swift and Tim Burton versus like, yeah, there was these like, you know, scenes versus emos versus goth things when we were growing up. But like people who listen to The Cure and like people who listen to Panic at the Disco, like I feel like there's less daylight between them than like Swifties and furries.
I do think when we were growing up and in that emo goth heyday of Hot Topic, there was a lot of territorialism when it came to different scenes. But I think subcultures were stronger because you had more physical spaces that they were rooted in. And that's not to discount like the power of like community online and everything, but I'm thinking of that New York Times Magazine piece that made a really compelling argument that there are no subcultures anymore, and they're just like wisps of micro trends that we're trying to grasp onto now, that I think is really interesting. And I think that signals that people still really want that sense of community. And I do think that the way that fandom works now, there isn't as much interplay with those different communities, but you are allowed to like very disparate things now simultaneously. Like I remember when I was a teenager, like you had to be very specific about the thing you were into. And, you know, I couldn't admit that I was into the Ramones and maybe that I liked a little bit of pop music. Like it was very like, no, this is my thing, you know? And now like tastes are so eclectic and people like to experience so many different kinds of things. So I think it's several things happening at once.
Yeah, but at the same time, it does seem like subcultures are more of a consumer behavior than a community behavior.
Yeah,
at least more than they used to be.
That's a good point. And with more of the monoculture question, I mean, I reported this piece last year for GQ, which is probably one of my favorite things I've done, which is I did an oral history of the Vote for Pedro t-shirt. Like I talked to everyone involved in the film who had any passing connection with that. I talked to people who manufactured the t-shirts here in Los Angeles. Like it was fascinating, but I remember that you couldn't go anywhere when was that, 2004, without someone being like, your mom goes to college. Like it was so prevalent in culture. And now I struggle to think of something that has that, especially for an indie film. Like I struggle to think of something that has that much heft to it, to where it's just ingrained in the way that people are saying things. I could be wrong, but I do think that was more of a thing back then.
Well, I think too, it's just the longevity. Like right now, there's probably a bunch of kids in middle school, high school, shouting chicken jockey at each other because of the Minecraft movie. But then they probably won't be doing that in like 3 months, right? But like if that had come out 20 years ago when Twitter didn't exist and people, kids weren't at school on their phones, something like that. Maybe not chicken jockey specifically, but that has to be not to like, it's the phones. Use that as the lens here, but
kind of. I mean, we didn't have phones in 2004, so the way we entertained each other was quoting movies.
Anchorman.
At each other.
Yeah,
Anchorman.
The half-life of an Anchorman quote is much longer than the half-life of a meme.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Anchorman,
you know what I mean?
Massive.
Like, Skibbity Toilet may, last for a month, but I love Lampus forever.
There's also, okay, I've been thinking about White Lotus and Severance and how, I really enjoyed watching White Lotus because it's just
Was it too slow, or does everyone have ADHD?
I don't think it was too slow. I thought it was just a fun show to watch that I could enjoy without having to like analyze it or something, whereas Severance is like not a fun show to watch, and it's just like an SAT test for everybody on Twitter every Friday night. But what my point here is that like, so I've been watching this other show, Wheel of Time, which is based on this classic like fantasy series. It's on Amazon. Nobody's talking about it, and this is why I like
You're the
watching
first person I've heard mention it. I'm not even sure this is a real show.
Exactly.
I'm look it up.
This is why I enjoy it, because like, say White Lotus, the finale comes out, and I'm like, I watched it, I think on the Monday night because my girlfriend was out of town and wanted to watch it with her. So I knew I'm going to scroll on Twitter and I'm going to see some spoilers. And I hated that, where it's like, I wish that I could just like watch this show and like, just watch it as a show and not feel, it's my own fault for being addicted to Twitter too. Right. But not have to like, I have to watch it before I can scroll Twitter because I know I'm going to see the thing. So it's like, oh, it's my homework. I have to watch this show. Whereas this other show that nobody's watching, that you haven't heard of, it's like I can just watch it and like enjoy it in the way that I want to watch a TV show, which is to casually watch it and not feel like I have to like do homework.
I have not heard of the show either, and now I'm curious. But let me present you with a radical alternative to enjoy things. Embrace the spoilers. I truly do not care if something is spoiled for me. Honestly, like if I see something that ends up, being like a huge spoiler, fine. Whatever. I just, I'll tuck that away in my mind, but I'll still watch the thing and try.
Because if the spoiler is the thing that ruins everything, then the thing wasn't good in the first place.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So that is my pitch. Embrace the spoilers. Enjoy things whenever you want. During the cultural conversation, months after, whatever.
I think an entire generation, I'm going to go out on a limb and generalize and say an entire generation was traumatized by the knowledge that Dumbledore dies and finding that out. Not like me at summer camp under the covers with a flashlight in the warm bath of the text, but in some other context, with no warm up whatsoever, just maybe. I don't know. It could be a canon event for some people that get like really upset about spoilers.
I think something like a Game of Thrones would be a big culprit of this too, because I think that was such a thing that did rely on big twists and like, oh wow, I didn't expect this person was going to die, etc. So that's another place that this kind of spoiler culture could come from.
Here's another thing. I don't think I picked up on the fact that it was a requisite of a White Lotus season for somebody to die until this season. Like, first season, somebody died. Second season, somebody died. And then by the third season, I was like, oh, this is the point of the show, I guess. This is what we're all waiting for. This is the central tension. Because, like, I'm like you, Paula. Like, I would prefer not to see a spoiler, but you're watching it for the artistry.
That's where to spend time.
And the plot. But the plot is the plot, whether you find out beforehand or not. So yeah,
okay, and Dr. Seuss.
Whatever. And so now that like I'm like, this is the whole conceit of White Lotus is somebody unexpected dies at the end. I'm like, I don't know. It kind of was like, it's not as like cool to me.
Something I was thinking about this season, because by season 2, I was like, oh, like a murder that they then play it back is going to be the structure for every single ensuing season. What I'm wondering is, where is the corporate comms team freaking out about all of these murders happening on their properties all the time? I want a scene in a boardroom where people are really talking about their crisis strategy for this kind of thing, because they seem to don't really care that much. Like, people are still going to these resorts and, still, la-di-da. Besides Belinda, there's no real connection that there has been a murder previously at a different location. And so, like, I want more communication between the different locations is what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
Speaking of corporate comms, did you see what happened with Coffee Mate and White Lotus?
Oh, no. The day I was at the grocery store, the day of the finale, and I took a picture. I was like, Pina Colada Coffee Mate. Like,
so they like reached out to, like, when they were like, oh, we're doing our Thailand season, they reached out to Coffee Mate and they were like, it'd be so cool if we did a Pina Colada flavor, but they didn't tell them how it fit into the plot. And so Coffee Mate was like, oh, hell yeah, we'll do it. And they put out like the White Lotus collab Pina Colada. Wow. But they didn't know until the finale that it was like, whatever.
Poison seeds.
That's kind of amazing, because in my experience, I feel like, especially in the last 5 years, communicating with any kind of comms team is so like, they're like what am I trying to say? Like, they're like, what they are asking is so much more involved now than it used to be. And so I'm surprised that something as high profile as that they wouldn't ask, what is the Pina Colada plotline being used for? Right. Is this going to make Coffee Mate
just potentially look drink.
Bad? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, let's hope they didn't have some sort of like, you can't make us look like Branch Davidians clause in their contract, because they're all like lawyered up. But I think more culture creators should fuck with brands. And Francis knows I have an ongoing list of brands that I would like to fuck with, because you're doing them a favor. You're like, it's kind of for your own good that I'm fucking with you right now, because that Pina Colada Coffee Mate is kind of like way funnier now. And maybe it's like a 4D chess thing where it's like, we're going to know and we're going to pretend not to know to draw even more attention to it. But
it wouldn't be interesting if it was anything else. If it was just like, oh, Greg drank a pina colada at the party, and that was just something he drank. Like, there's no story there. There's no reason to post about it.
Yeah, and I think if they acknowledge that they were in on the joke, it doesn't become funny anymore. Yeah. So, but I do think that there is a way that people can play with brands in this kind of winking way that can be really interesting. But yeah, I'm curious if you would reveal your list of brands that you fuck with, Daisy.
I can't, because I might make fucking with them like a bigger part of my partnership strategy at Dirt. Wait, are Branch Davidians the one that did mass suicide?
That's a lot of them. Branch Davidians are the ones in Texas, right?
Oh, they got in the shootout.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm thinking of the guy who's kind of handsome. The Nikes and the Kool-Aid. Yeah. Who is that?
Nikes and the Kool-Aid?
Yeah, Nikes and the Kool-Aid.
Well, that's Heaven's Gate, maybe.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate.
Isn't the Kool-Aid separate, though? The Kool-Aid is Jonestown?
Kool-Aid is Jonestown, I think.
But the cult wasn't called Jonestown.
No, it was Brian Jones.
It happened in Jonestown.
That's where the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid" comes from, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anywho, brands that I would like to fuck with. Yeah, I don't want to reveal them yet in case I do successfully get to fuck with them someday. But I think the problem is they do understand the power of mischief, but a lot, and this kind of goes back to the piece that Francis wrote that we published yesterday about brand sillage, is like they understand the power of mischief, but they'll do like derivative mischief. Like, it has to be something somebody else did first. So like, oh, Liquid Death did like a keg of Liquid Death with pregnant ladies in their commercial. So like, we're going to do a pregnant lady commercial. Or, like the Duolingo owl is threatening to kill people. Like our mascot should threaten to kill people.
It's just not to bring it back to this, like, but it's reheating nachos.
Yeah. I would say like that Pop-Tart that was resurrected in the toaster, that was pretty original. But I really feel awful for whoever had to pitch that and get it all the way up the flagpole.
I would have loved to have been in that pitch meeting.
Yeah. I think, right. I do think that there's going to be a place for like kind of goading brands to let you into the room. And so I salute the White Lotus Coffee mate, Mischief. And the other thing is like, I mean, Mischief, the company has obviously made like an art form and a business out of this. But I do think, I kind of think of them as like A24.
Gimmicks as a service.
Yeah. I mean, they've obviously done a ton of original stuff, but they've almost become a weight on the industry because like, they just are giving people new ideas to be derivative about. I don't know.
I think it's more about who has the best gimmick that commands attention for about 5 seconds. And then that becomes diverted into, to your point, like derivative mischief that other people try and replicate, which always has diminishing returns.
Brat,
exactly. But somehow still going strong, if Coachella is any indication.
Okay, I wanted to talk. I read your Barnes and Noble's piece in Dirt, and I was.
It's Barnes and Noble, but Barnes I understand why you're saying that because I used to say that.
Okay, Barn and Noble. Anyways, Barnes and Noble. But I was thinking about this too in the mall context because I've got good memories of going to a Barnes and Noble and like reading manga for hours when I was in 6th grade. There was one in the local mall where I was, but now, like when I go to bookshops, I don't even like to go to the Strand in New York. I just kind of go to the few in my neighborhood that are all also coffee shops. And I only go to bookstores now that are also coffee shops. But the context I'm interested in this in is like the idea of third spaces and how every other month there's people tweeting about like, oh, third spaces are dead. I specifically saw one yesterday that was like, why are there no third spaces for men? Which that's a whole other thing. But, I don't know. I think it's compelling. I guess that like Barnes and Noble has come back like this because I do have positive memories of going to these places when I was a kid. But that's like, are these in malls? There's like 60 new ones opening, I think you mentioned in that piece. Are these standalone? Are they in malls? What's up with this?
It's both. So one of the things I found most fascinating while reporting that piece is that Barnes & Noble, several years after they close locations in specific places, they're reopening sometimes in the exact same place. And that's fascinating because, for instance, like the one that I went to out here in Santa Monica, I don't know if you've been, but there's an outdoor mall called the 3rd Street Promenade that has a very long history on the west side of LA. It's very close to the Santa Monica Pier and the beach, but it is definitely not as poppin' now as it used to be for various reasons, right? Rising rents, there were a ton of retail vacancies at least last year. And one of the big ones that left, I want to say in 2018, was a very large Barnes & Noble, and they reopened on the 3rd Street Promenade, not in the same location, but like half a block
within
down.
Blocks. Yeah.
Within blocks. And I find that so fascinating because doubling down on something that didn't work in the first place is a very interesting strategy. But so to a certain extent, I think they are opening in malls, but they are doing it in different locations too. And sometimes opening where the Amazon bookstores used to be, which is also interesting. But to your point about the cafes, the one that I went to, I also have very strong memories of growing up loving Barnes & Noble. That was my favorite place to hang out. The one in Houston had a Starbucks in it that had that like early 2000s Panera Core vibe. I would always get my my Frappuccino. I would sit in the magazine rack and I would just read until like my mom came and picked me up, right? And now the new Barnes and Nobles don't have cafes in them. A lot of them don't. Like the one in Santa Monica does not have a cafe inside. It's right next door to a Coffee Bean. So maybe they thought that it would achieve that kind of synchronicity, I guess. But if we're talking about third spaces, I don't know that it's being fostered in that same way, with the exclusion of those coffee shops, even though coffee shops are still massive for people to hang out. Like I went to Stories here in LA, which is an indie bookstore in Echo Park that has a cafe inside, and you could not move with how packed it was inside. Like it's very much
like just on like a random afternoon or something.
Yeah, it was a Sunday. I was the oldest person in there. I'm 33. Like it was all like 20 somethings just hanging out, like, you know, picking up different books and drinking coffee. So I think there is an appetite for that. Definitely.
If I was Barnes and Noble and I was going to come up with a mischief for them, I would add an S to just one location, because everyone thinks it's called Barnes and Nobles and it's really like a strong Mandela effect. And then I would take out all the titles that begin with S and be like, we had to melt them down to do the S. And then after everyone was like, what? I'd be like, just kidding. Every book that starts with an S is on sale.
Sounds like a Nathan Fielder bit.
I think my problem is like, I'm not actually good at marketing. I'm just good at coming up with ideas that Nathan Fielder would think of and then be like, that's not very good.
The third space thing, one thing I also just remembered is like when
third space is for men. That's just called public space, and you have had it forever.
It's just called the subway when you manspread. Anyways, no, but I remember in 5th grade I was with my friend. We were visiting his father in LA, and we were at a Barnes and Noble, and we'd been there for hours, and the security guard came up to us. He was like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, "Oh, you're just reading." And he let us be. And I've like, whenever I think of Barnes and Noble, it's that specifically that I think of, because I thought that was so sweet and so like pro-social within the mall. Like it's almost like an idealized mall experience.
Yeah, I think I do.
Now I buy a lot of books from Thrift Books and Abe Books, though, I should admit.
Oh, I mean, they have great stuff. Yeah, whenever I look for an older book, usually there's like an Abe listing comes up, and a lot of times they're like Abe signed or something cool like that. So
yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I've never done the dive into like how does Abe work as a business, but the selection is impressive. I feel like when I'm looking for something that's out of print, almost always they have something that's available.
I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, that they might work by cross-listing dealer inventory without having to maintain their own inventory. Which is obviously like a good way to have less overhead.
I got a book from one of those two sites recently that was from a Goodwill somewhere in the middle of the country.
That's cool. I feel like I haven't done, I mean, now enough people know about it that like know how to find good stuff that it's like not as good anymore. But I feel like you used to be able to find stuff in the Goodwill auctions that were like, if you did like a full digital search, like designer stuff in some area where it wasn't like identified immediately.
I think enough people have found out about it now. I've never been able to like get something really good from one of those auctions before, or, you know, the stores tend to be really picked over. I feel like Facebook Marketplace is the place now.
Didn't you wrote a piece about this?
I did, not to bring it back to my work.
Please do. You're the guest here. Come on.
But yeah, I mean, the way that Facebook Marketplace has developed into this chaotic free-for-all where you can find amazing things is fascinating. And I think they are taking on more of a share of maybe something that Goodwill used to, or even eBay to some extent used to. I mean, so much of this is local.
I associate it as like a replacement Craigslist.
Craigslist for sure. But they also, some people ship on Facebook Marketplace too. So you can make it local, or you can make it, you know, you can get something shipped to you.
Which is a problem I've had with it, where I've tried to use it as Craigslist, but then there's too many like drop shipped, like looking for like patio chairs a year or so ago. And there was like, it was really hard to find anything good that I could go like walk to and pick up. It was so much like just drop shipped stuff.
So it has been infiltrated by professional resellers at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It has. And I think part of why I find like weird good shit on there is because I've spent so much time training the algorithm to show me weird shit. But I've also very diligently, like there are ads that populate, and I X out of everything. I hide the drop shipped options. I only look at local. And the benefit of being in Los Angeles is if it fits in the trunk of my car, I'm going to drive out and get it. So.
Speaking of Los Angeles, you just wrote a pretty detailed report for us about Los Angeles Festival of Movies.
Yeah.
And in addition to not having gone to a music festival in a while, I'm not sure that I've ever gone to a film festival, which I'm sad to admit, but this one sounded really fun. And I like that you said what food was there, because I think that that's really important. There was one line in your piece about drinking a latte at the movie theater, which I agree with completely. I think it's having, well, some of us have small bladders, but I think having a latte at the movie theater is underrated. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about like the role that festival is playing in the ecosystem right now.
Yeah. So I was so happy to be able to drink a latte at a movie at 1:00 in the afternoon on Sunday, especially after staying out pretty late the night before, after the Friendship premiere, which was a lot of fun too, at LA Festival of Movies. Yeah, so there was a stretch in my life where I went to Sundance a lot. And Sundance is fascinating for different reasons, but it felt, it's a lot bigger. It's chaotic in some ways. And I think that what it's trying to achieve is perhaps different than something like Los Angeles Festival of Movies. And I haven't been to any of the big ones. Like, I haven't been to Toronto. I haven't been to True False. But this one felt just really thoughtfully curated to me, not only in terms of the food selections that they had from and drinks from different people that they partnered with, but also the selection of movies. It wasn't that big. There were a dozen-ish films. They had some shorts too, and they had some talks. But I think they made a point to have it at venues that were multi-purpose spaces. So 2220 Arts and Archives, which is where quite a few of the screenings happen. The only other time I had been there was for a rave. And they have like a screening room in the back. They have like a cool bar area and like a pretty open floor, like in the lobby. So it's definitely a hangout space, bringing it back to the third spaces, right? They had some tables there where people could socialize. And I do think, and Los Angeles is a place that's stratified. Like and I say this as someone who's fairly extroverted, like it is hard to interact with people here sometimes just because of the nature of the city. And I think what the festival did such a great job of was really trying to foster those kinds of connections by the kinds of venues that it had, which I think was one of the goals that they had. And I certainly felt it. Like, I went to, the first thing that I saw was Friendship, the new Tim Robinson, Paul Rudd film, which was hilarious. It was great. I had a total blast, but I didn't go with anyone. I didn't know if anyone I knew was going to be there. And I ended up closing the place down. I cannot say that I've done that at another industry type event here, where usually like I'll go and like I'll have a drink and like maybe I'll talk to a few people, but then, it kind of peters out and then I go home and, hang out with my dog, whatever. But this was, it felt very distinct to me in that sense. And I don't know if it was because everyone was kind of giddy after the movie because it's so silly and great, or if it was a factor of the space, maybe a little bit of both. But I was very pleasantly surprised by the social aspect of the festival too.
That sounds really nice.
It was fun. I had a good time. Back-to-back cool festivals in Los Angeles. Festivals are back, baby.
I don't remember the last festival I've been to, actually. When I lived in New Orleans, there would be a bunch of weird food festivals, like fried chicken festival, mac and cheese festival, and that would be we went to a couple of those, but then it's just so hot. They'd be like in the summer, and it's so hot there, and you're going to different booths, eating mac and cheese. Fun for a while.
Francis, speaking of that, did you ever participate in any like state fairs growing up on a farm?
State fairs. No, we did have the county fair. We weren't part of that though. That was like in a different part of the county. That's more like the ranchers. And where, my family was more of like the hippies who came in and grew flowers rather than, the rancher families that had been there for 100+ years. But more so like my good memories of that kind of thing is like the Christmas fair where there's all these vendors and it's at the county fairgrounds and I'm like a little child running around and running through crowds to like go get candied hazelnuts from the Swiss family who made those a few warehouses down. Yeah, that's a good memory.
That sounds like a really good third space for Matt.
Yeah, that's. I was about to say, like, that's so wholesome to buy candied hazelnuts from the Swiss family down the way. Yeah. Like, I want that. That's glorious.
Yeah, and I think that they're long retired now. That was 20 some years ago. Third spaces for men, bars.
Rodeos. Paula, were you involved in any rodeos as a child?
I was not. It was interesting because my family emigrated from Colombia to the U.S. in the late 1980s, and I was actually born in New York City because my parents lived there for a spell in the late 80s and early 90s, and we moved around a bit. So I moved to Texas when I was maybe 5. So we were not that fully entrenched. And I think because my family had like the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, there was a degree of skepticism of like, what is this? But now my parents have like, they still live in Houston and they've like fully embraced like being Texan and like love living there. And the Houston rodeo is massive. Like it's like the small time rodeos are really fun. I've been to some in, small towns like Taylor, Texas. And like, that is like a whole thing. Like the whole town is out. You got the kids doing the mutton busting. Like there's, elaborate routines with like people on horses and flags. Oh, what don't you eat? Anything that you could fry, you eat. And you could fry a lot of things, it turns out. Tacos, funnel cakes.
Ice cream.
Pina colada.
Fried pina colada. I'm sure that actually, I think that would actually be really good.
Yeah, that sounds like it slaps. Free idea.
Yeah, seriously.
Any brands listening? My new, I would say, corporate tick is I started calling events activations as a joke, and now I've been saying it unironically. When I partner with somebody, I'm like, I think we could really activate your space instead of like we should throw an event together, and it's becoming a problem.
That's why they pay you.
Nobody pays me though. I'm just humiliating myself for nothing.
Do you speak of your life in quarters?
Oh my God, I did the other day. I texted a friend and I was like, how's your Q2 going? Then I was like, oh shit.
See, is this a function though of the corporatization of modern life, or is it just like being in your 30s?
You have to kill the Q2 inside of you.
Maybe a bit of both. I mean, I think because
here we are in the Q2 of our lives.
I hate that. Why?
New millennial nonfiction essay collection just dropped.
I was thinking about it more in the sense of I never thought about things in that way until throughout my life I've been at staff jobs. Actually, Daisy and I met over a decade ago at International Business Times. Yeah. What a time that was. I was working
Vichy Newsweek. We got to do an episode just about that, Francis. It involves the Moonies. It involves SEO farming in Indonesia. It involves do you remember the art piece that I had in my cubicle, which was every day I would drink a coffee, I would get a lipstick stain on it. Usually they were slightly different colors because I wore different lipsticks. I would pin the cup to my cubicle, and there was just
trash wall.
Trash wall is a really derogatory term for it. I would think of it more as the kiss wall. It was lines, like symmetrical lines of these coffee cups with the kiss marks lined up, and just like slight variations. I still feel that was maybe my masterpiece.
I don't remember this, but that sounds killer.
Did you ever post this to Grid with an Instagram?
We did sit across. I mean, we were pretty far from each other.
Yeah, this was when IBT owned Newsweek. Do you remember the click bonuses? Like, that was the most like dystopian. So there was a chart where they would give you bonuses, like, you know, if you would get like 100,000 clicks on a story, like you would make like X amount of money, and the base salaries were horrifyingly low, and like worse for you guys than Newsweek. Like it was wild, and the amount that we had to write, my God, I still think about that. 3 to 5 stories per day was our quota. It was manic, but also, you know, I was 23 and I had just moved to New York, and like, you know, I could still go out and show up at work and it would be fine, but it was.
You could still write 3 to 5 hungover.
Chartbeat owes me emotional damages, and all of us.
Chartbeat.
I think, our mutual friend Zach Schoenfeld, I really think that he like turned the lights off when he left that place. You know what I mean? I cannot believe he stayed at Newsweek as long as he did, and he got to do really cool work because of it. But I kept being like, when is like, I don't know. I feel like when Zach leaves, I'm writing it off completely is basically how I felt.
There was a point where when Zach was still at Newsweek, I would joke to him and I would say, Zach, I think it's just you and a laptop at this point. Like, I just, like, you are the last one standing. Like, somehow you're, like, still putting out, like, really interesting things. But how is this place still? Were you there the time that the DA's office raided the
No, I regret it every day. I regret it every day that I missed that.
What a wild place. The other weird Newsweek memory that sticks out to me is, do you remember for like a week they were trying to film a reality TV show about like working in a newsroom, and they ended up killing it because it was so boring and everyone was just typing on Slack and GChat because that's where we all talked. There was one time our managing editor brought a keg to the office and they were like, oh, hell yeah, finally, like some action. And it was just us standing around like this, holding a single beer, not wanting to look bad in front of our bosses at our first job.
That's so funny, dude. I don't remember that, but
it's wild.
It's like, I've already brought it up too much, but I read Graydon Carter's memoir and I was like, no memoir written by a person our age is going to be this interesting, because you would have entire chapters that would just be like that.
Yeah. There's got to be like one company that was so messy.
It's called Dirt Media, dirt.fyi. And on that note, this is Tasteland.
This is Tasteland. Thank you for listening. Paula, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.